They put a foreclosure notice on my front door over a $55 fine I never even knew existed, padlocked my gate, froze my accounts, and told me I had 30 days to vacate the home I'd lived in for 11 years. What they didn't bother to check before starting. This war was whose son they were dealing with. I still remember the exact sound the padlock made when I saw it hanging on my front gate. It wasn't loud. It was small, actually. A dull little clunk of metal against metal. But standing in my own driveway in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon, holding grocery bags, staring at a bright orange foreclosure notice taped to my front door, that sound hit me like a freight train. My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 34 years old. I'm a middle school science teacher. I coach youth soccer on weekends. I have never once, in my entire life, been in trouble with the law. And somehow, I was standing outside my own home, unable to get in, because the Maplewood Estates Homeowners Association said I owed them $55. $55. I want you to let that sink in for a second. I had lived in that house for 11 years. 11 years of mowing my lawn on schedule, painting my shutters the approved shade of beige, never once parking on the grass. I attended HOA meetings when I could. I smiled and waved at neighbors I didn't particularly like. I followed every rule in that covenant document like it was sacred text, and they foreclosed on me over $55. The notice on my door said the fine had been issued 8 months ago for an unapproved garden border installation. I had put down a small row of smooth river stones along my front flower bed. Stones, not a fence, not a wall. Stones, the kind you buy in a bag at any hardware store. The fine had allegedly been mailed to me 3 times. I never received a single letter. But here's what the HOA was counting on. Most people, when they see a foreclosure notice, panic. They assume they must have done something wrong. They scramble to pay whatever is asked, sign whatever is put in front of them, and quietly go away. That's the system working exactly as designed. Not for homeowners, but against them. I almost fell for it too. I pulled out my phone and called the number on the notice. It rang 4 times and went to a voicemail box that identified itself as Maplewood Estates HOA Compliance Division. I left a message. Then I stood on my own porch, locked out of my own home, and tried to figure out what to do next. That's when my neighbor Diane came outside. Diane is 71 years old, a retired librarian, and one of the few genuinely kind people on that street. She walked over with her reading glasses pushed up on her head and a look on her face that told me she already knew what had happened. "Marcus," she said quietly, "this has Karen written all over it. Karen Whitfield. HOA President. Block Captain. Self-appointed moral authority of Maplewood Estates." Karen had moved into the neighborhood about 3 years after I did, and within 6 months she had completely taken over the HOA board. She ran unopposed because nobody wanted to deal with the politics of it. She rewrote the fine schedule, doubled the late fees, and started a compliance patrol, where she and 2 of her friends would walk the neighborhood on Sunday mornings with clipboards and cameras, photographing anything they felt was a violation. I had been on her radar for a while, not because I broke rules, but because I pushed back when the rules didn't make sense. 2 years ago, she tried to fine me for having a basketball hoop in my driveway. I cited the state recreational equipment statute that explicitly protected the right to have one. She dropped it, but she didn't forget. Karen was the kind of person who wore authority like armor. She spoke at HOA meetings in a clipped, practiced tone that was designed to make you feel like questioning her was somehow embarrassing. She brought printed packets to every meeting. She used words like covenant integrity and community standards, the way other people use punctuation, constantly, and often without real meaning. What she was not, though, was someone who expected to be challenged seriously, because in 11 years on that street, nobody really had. That evening, I called a locksmith to get back into my own house, which cost me an additional $120 I hadn't planned on spending. I sat at my kitchen table with the foreclosure notice laid flat in front of me and read every single word of it. Then I read my HOA agreement again, all 42 pages of it, with a highlighter. By midnight, I had found 3 separate procedural violations in the way the fine had been issued and escalated. The HOA was required under state law to send notices via certified mail with return receipt confirmation before initiating any lien or foreclosure process. There was no record of certified mail. The covenant also required a mandatory mediation offer before escalation to foreclosure. That offer had never been made. They hadn't followed their own rules or the law. I went to bed that night feeling something shift quietly inside me. It wasn't anger exactly, though that was there too. It was something steadier, something that felt like resolve. Because here's what Karen didn't know when she approved that padlock on my gate. She didn't know who I was about to call. She didn't know that the man I had in mind had spent 30 years in a courtroom, had argued cases in front of state Supreme Courts, and had a reputation in legal circles that made opposing attorneys rearrange their schedules to avoid him. She didn't know I was about to call my father.